less serious way to look at the topic. But I want to tell you just quickly about myself before I get into the heart of the talk. Basically, my name is Lisa Zimmerman. I am a health coach, a personal trainer, a yoga instructor, and I'm a meditation teacher. And I work with and for a physician, which is kind of unusual because most MDs don't necessarily hire that type of staff. But this particular physician that I work with really sees the value in holistic health and sees that health is more than just blood work and medication. So that's one thing that I do. I also have my own health coaching practice outside where I work with people and really following the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's pillars of health and wellness. So those pillars are restorative sleep, a predominantly plant-based style of eating, which we're going to touch on tonight, stress reduction, finding ways to move your body that you really enjoy, not just suffering through exercising, and avoidance of risky substances. And I think we kind of know what those are. And most importantly, positive social connection. So we're really starting to make that connection as of late about how important it is to have positive social connections. But tonight we'll just touch on what is a plant-based diet and a few other topics. So to get started, what I'd like for you to walk away this evening is an understanding, a basic understanding of what plant-based nutrition is. Then we could talk about how eating plants supports your health, and then how you can get more plants into your diet or get more plants onto your plate is the way I like to think of it. So the thing is we've been told all our life, I remember hearing all the times from my mom and grandmother, well, you need to eat your vegetables, but it really wasn't clear why. And if we take a look at this screen, we can see that this is the standard American diet. This is what most of us are eating on a daily basis. And unfortunately, this is the default. And this default isn't nourishing. This default is not supporting our health. It is creating disease. It's creating medical issues. And it's not the most nourishing thing. It's not that I don't eat hot dogs or pizza or tacos. In fact, I eat everything that's here. It's just, it's a treat. It's not something I eat every day. And so we all kind of know what's missing in the middle, and I would say that's plants. And now when I'm talking about plants, a lot of times we'll think, okay, celery, carrots, that's a plant. But there are so many different varieties of plants that we're going to learn about that have nothing to do with just like the basic ones that we're thinking about, potatoes and broccoli. So there's a lot more to this. Unfortunately, in our country right now, we are in a big, big, big public health issue in regards to our overall state of wellness and health. We have about 2/3 of our fellow Americans who are considered overweight or obese. We have about 29 million Americans who are diabetic. About 5 million of us suffer from Alzheimer's. And we have about $1 trillion in global pharmaceutical spending. Now, I am in no way anti-pharmaceuticals. I think that they're wonderful. I think they have their place. I think they should be prescribed. But I also think there's other ways to manage some of the chronic lifestyle-related diseases that we're seeing that have less to do with pharmaceuticals and more to do with living every day and lifestyle. So, why is healthy eating important? Getting back to that, well, grandmothers and aunts and uncles and everybody telling us to eat vegetables and eat fruits and it's important. I don't think it's ever really come through as to why that's important, but it really comes down to the cell. So when you think about your body is made of cells. These cells become tissues, these tissues become organs, and these organs become systems. And if you kind of rewind to those bio classes back in high school or college, they talked about the cell and the mitochondria and how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And so your cells, what they do is they create energy, and then they also excrete waste. And so you want these cells to be firing and working because we are them. They make up who we are. So we want to keep them healthy. And so they need good nutrition. They need nourishment in order to function. So it's like the smallest unit of who we are requires really healthy eating and plants. I love this author. His name is Michael Pollan. And since this is a library program, I always will put in books and authors because I happen to really love books a lot. So Michael Pollan is a journalist. He's a professor at NYU. He's written some really amazing literature, some really amazing books. One of them is The Omnivore's Dilemma. But one of the quotes from that book is, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I just think it's a really nice way to think about how we can approach the way that we go about consuming food. So one of the reasons that plants are so important to eat, not just the cells, as I spoke about before, but it's how they fill us up. So plant-based foods are filling. So nuts, seeds, vegetables, mushrooms, carrots, whatever. They are very, very filling in the sense that there's a lot of volume, but not a lot of calories. So if we look at these three stomachs, we have one that has 400 calories of oil, that's that yellow substance. And then we have one that has about 400 calories of beef, and then the rest has 400 calories of vegetables. Now, this is by no means to scale, because quite honestly, that's probably 100 calories of vegetables. But I think you kind of get the point of what this graph is showing, is that there are stretch receptors located throughout your stomach. And so when you eat, they get triggered by the food, by the volume of the food. They send signals to your brain that says, okay, I'm full, I can stop eating. So when you're eating food that is high in fiber, that is plant-based, you can get a lot of quantity of nutrition and minerals and vitamins and all kinds of other things for the least amount of calories. So that's a really good reason to be eating plants. Another thing is this is not a study. So I want to make this clear. This is a graph. This was a small little experiment done, but it's very, very interesting, the information that they came out with. So what this particular person did was they took equal parts of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes, and they called that plant-based foods. Then they took equal parts of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk, and made that into a group called animal-based foods. And each group, each serving was kilocalories of about 500. And what they did is they looked at the nutrient composition of the plant-based foods versus the animal-based foods. And what you see is very interesting. So if you look at the first column, the nutrient is cholesterol. Now, we've been told cholesterol is evil. We don't, get rid of your cholesterol, lower your cholesterol. Cholesterol is actually, in small amounts, very necessary for you to function. It helps you make hormones. It has a lot of functions in the body. It's just when we have too much cholesterol. Well, interestingly enough, there is no cholesterol in plant-based foods. Cholesterol is only in animal-based foods. So that is one interesting fact. When you go to the next line, you see the fat content, a lot less fat in plant-based foods. Protein, surprisingly, they were pretty similar. So that's kind of surprising, because you would think that there's not a lot of protein in plants, but there is. Beta carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A, which we need for many, many reasons, but most of us know vitamin A for eyesight, lots of that in the plant-based foods. Fiber. There's no fiber in animal-based foods. And the reason is you and I and other mammals, we have skeletons, and that's what holds us up. What keeps us upright. But plants don't have a skeleton, they have cellulose. So if you've ever grown a tomato and you didn't bring your clippers and you're trying to pull that tomato off the vine and it's really, really being stubborn, and then you pull off the stalk, that is the cellulose. So that's the fiber that makes up the plant-based foods. So we go down the line, you see there's more vitamin C, there's more folate, there's more vitamin E. Surprisingly, there's more iron in plant-based foods, but we'll get back to that because that's not necessarily 100% accurate. So we'll look at that for a second. More magnesium and more calcium. So overall, it does appear that the plant-based foods either supply just as much nutrients as you need, if not more in some other groups. So going on and moving with this, we really need to figure out, okay, so what does plant-based diets mean? And to my knowledge, to this date, there really is no good definition of what a plant-based diet is. I have read some studies in cardiovascular journals where that particular scientist, investigator was saying it was a vegan diet, which is fair because in his hospital, he's a cardiologist and that's what he prescribes to his patients. But plant-based diets really do have a variety, because remember, we're talking about plant-based. So there's a basis of. If we take a look at certain types of plant-based diets, we'll take a look at first one, which is vegan. So a person who is a vegan is not only sticking to a very specific dietary pattern, it's also an ethic for them. So this person will not use, eat, consume any type of product, if possible, if it comes from an animal. So they are strictly plants. So no skincare, no shampoo, no conditioners, no leather pocketbooks, no leather shoes. They're very specific about everything is plant-based, nothing comes from an animal. Then you have your lacto-ovo vegetarians. So those are folks who eat lots of vegetables, they eat cheese, and they eat eggs, but they don't eat any animal flesh. So if it's coming from a fish or if it's coming from a cow or a chicken, they do not eat that. Then you have your pesco or your pesco vegetarian or your pescatarian. They eat lots of veggies. They have perhaps some cheese and eggs. Depends on the person who is the pesco, but they eat fish and that's it. They don't, when it comes to animal products beyond that, they're not going to eat anything like a cow or a chicken. So they're just eating fish. Then you have what's not on this slide, which is a flexitarian. And I do see a lot of that. And these are folks who are maybe eating vegan on Monday, and then Tuesday through Sunday, they are just eating whatever, or they are vegan before 6 p.m. and then at 6 p.m. they might have a steak for dinner, or they kind of vary through all these different types of eating and they go back and forth. So that's a flexitarian. So there are different types of becoming plant-based or eating a plant-based type of diet. So one of the most important things about eating plant-based is really eating the rainbow. And you may have in school back in the day received like a handout about eating the rainbow, or maybe your children, or maybe you have a grandchild who brought something home. But again, it's another thing where they don't really get into why you should be eating the rainbow, and you know how this has nothing to do with I don't even know the name of that cereal, but it's the eating the rainbow cereal. So why do we need to eat the rainbow? Why do we need such a variety? Well, let's get back again. Why is it so important to eat plants? What is it that we've been told for decades, years, you know, what is this? Well, plants have something called phytonutrients. So if you have ever eaten broccoli rabe, for instance, and you're like, wow, that was really bitter, they should have blanched it first. What you have eaten is a phytonutrient. So phytonutrients, phyto means plant and nutrient means nutrient. These are compounds that are in the plant. They are in the plant's immune system. So just like you guys and me, we have an immune system, so do plants. Because when plants are in the garden or on a farm, they get attacked by pests, bugs, microbes, fungus, bacteria, and they can't just get up and walk away and go to, you know, the local city MD and get a prescription for what's bothering them. They have to contend with it. So these phytonutrients protect the plants from the pests and all these environmental stressors. They also are what give the plant their color and their distinctive tastes. So if you've ever seen carrots and you've heard maybe the word carotenoids, well, that is responsible for that carrot's deep, rich, beautiful orange color. And again, maybe you've eaten arugula and you said, wow, that's really peppery and that's really spicy. Well, that is a phytonutrient. So not only are they defending your health, but they're also defending their own health. So when we eat them, we also benefit from them. So there are benefits of eating more plants than meat. And I just want to stop for a second and mention that a lot of the cultures that have made it into their hundreds, so we call these cultures, we call these groups of folks centenarians. So areas of the world where people are living really vibrant, they're just very vibrant and full of energy and living into their 90s and 100s. They're eating a very predominantly plant-based type of eating. And meat is a condiment. So it's very different than what we do in this country, where we plop down a really big steak and then maybe we have a little carrots or potatoes. Meat is the condiment. Meat is maybe the size of the palm of your hand, or it's just a little bit of a side dish. And the plants are the main dish. So that's part of reversing your thinking about the plant to meat ratio. But back to the human body and back to these compounds, not only do they protect us and protect the plants, but they also stimulate enzymes in the human body that are involved with eliminating cellular and metabolic waste. So we go back to the beginning when we talked about the cell, and the cell being like that very, very starting point, the building block of the human body and who we are. There's been a lot of studies showing how eating plants and shifting away from the meat and eating more plants has been very, very successful in treating cardiovascular disease. There is a lot of data to show that eating plants promotes healthy estrogen metabolism, probably because plants have fiber. And then there's a lot of cases, and we've seen them in the practice, where people lower their blood pressure, their cholesterol, and their blood sugar by just shifting into eating more plants. So it can be pretty powerful, almost as powerful as a medication. So phytonutrients, this is a pretty new field. We've been basically 20 or 30 years into it. And there's a lot of data to suggest that these phytonutrients are linked to longevity, so long life, living into your 90s, the reversal or the prevention of heart disease, the lowering risk of cancer, and maybe even slowing the progression of cancer cells, improving the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, most likely because plants are anti-inflammatory. And a lot of patients that are on a plant-based diet who are eating predominantly plants are typically prescribed fewer medications because they tend to have fewer disease. So I wanted to put this in here because this is a question that I get asked a lot, and so I figured I'd just put this slide in here before the question gets asked, because people are asking me now, okay, COVID-19, how do I boost my immune system? What can I do? So if anybody is telling you that they're going to boost your immune system, I'd like for you to really be careful of that person, because boosting an immune system means that you have an autoimmune condition like lupus or multiple sclerosis. You don't want to boost your immune system. And if someone tells you that they're going to give you a pill or a supplement or a food that's going to boost your immune system, ask them, how does that work? Is this going to work on my innate immune system? Is this going to work on my adaptive immune system? So immunology is a study, is a field of work that medical students study for months. And so it's not just simple as I'll just take this pill and my immune system is now being boosted. So this is a picture just from the adaptive immune system, and it's complicated, and it looks like it's going to give you a headache if you look at it much longer. But I just want to put that in there because I want to prevent you from being separated from your money from things that are just silly. Unfortunately, people just try to take advantage in situations like this. So I just want to put that there. Right, so how do we get these phytonutrients? Well, this is a sheet that I use with a lot of my clients. The kids love it and the adults like it, because on one side is a picture with all different colors, and then a list of all these different fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds that go in each color. So you could eat green, yellow, orange, red, blue, purple, and tan. And so my son, when he was younger, would run around with this little sheet of paper and try to find all the vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds that fit into the category. For other people, they find it's just really interesting because you don't think of using a spice or drinking a cup of tea and that being a serving of phytonutrients, but it is. So when we think of plants, we think of grass or a tree or a bush, but plants are grains, they're nuts, they're seeds, they're teas, they're herbs, they're spices. So they're anything that's growing out of the ground that is not a mammal or anything else. So what I recommend is try a new food every week. Kind of hang out in your produce aisle and hang out in the, the bean aisle and just look for things that you haven't tried before, or things that you know that you like, and make those the mainstay. And try to aim for 2 to 3 colors a day. So you can say, I had a bowl of oatmeal, that's beige, and I put some blueberries on it, that's blue, and I threw a little bit of apple on there, and that was red, and then I put some maple syrup, and I'm gonna say maple syrup is tan because it comes from a maple tree. So there's really easy ways to get these colors in, and it can be a lot simpler than we might think of it. So one of the questions I get often is, well, you know, I'm considering becoming vegan, or I'm considering becoming vegetarian, and I'm really concerned about protein. And what I will say to you is, in this country, you don't need to be concerned about protein. Yes, there may be some areas of this country where there is definitely food disparity and issues, but generally speaking, most Americans are not deficient in protein. That is something that you will see in sub-Saharan Africa, other areas of the world, but not here. There's a great book called Proteinaholic by Garth Davis. So it's Proteinaholic, just think alcoholic, but Proteinaholic, and he talks about this. So we do need protein, and I'm not minimizing it, but we do use it to build and repair muscle. We need it for our bone and skin. It helps us synthesize hormones and enzymes. It's incredibly, incredibly important. You can get plant-based protein from beans, peas, nuts, seeds, legumes. A lot of vegetables have condensed proteins, for example, mushrooms. So it's possible. If this is something that you're truly concerned about, there is a nice little equation that you can do, and what you would do is take your weight and multiply it by 0.36 grams. So let's just say I'm 160 pounds. I'm going to multiply this by 0.36 grams. That means that I need 58 grams per protein, about 1/8 of a pound per day. So we can do 3 cups of almonds, 2 cups of beans, 2 cups of cheese, or a cup of chicken. However, you might say, there's no way I'm eating 3 cups of almonds. Well, I completely agree with you. So what you do is you mix and match. You have a little bit of the chicken, a little bit of the cheese, and maybe there's some beans thrown on. You have a salad, and then maybe for lunch in between, you're going to have a handful of almonds. So it's not that you just eat all of these at once, but you just kind of mix and match and just see how you can get protein in different food groups. Calcium is really important. We hear about milk and how it does your body good. It does. Calcium builds bone and teeth. It's very important in the function of your heart, your muscles, and your nerves. But you still can get plant-based sources. So Chinese cabbage, bok choy, kale, and broccoli are very, very high in calcium. Also, a lot of these soy and almond and hazelnut and these nut milks are all calcium fortified. So that's another place to get it. I haven't eaten dairy in like 20 years and I don't have a calcium deficiency. So it's very possible to get it from other areas. Iron, very important. The thing with iron is that it is what carries the oxygen in your blood, and there are iron-rich plant foods. However, the thing is that the plant-based iron is not as easily absorbed as it would be from meat. So I always tell anybody who's definitely going to go over to a vegan style of eating that they should get a blood test with their physician. They may need to have iron supplements. Most of the iron that you're going to get in a plant-based diet is from whole grains. So that is farro or barley or black rice or brown rice, your dried beans, your peas, and your dark leafy greens. So the kale and the escarole and the arugula and all those dark leafy greens is where you're going to get most of the iron from. Vitamin D. So it seems like us in the Northeast, we seem to be particularly deficient in this. Everybody usually gets a vitamin D test for their blood work. And you really do need vitamin D. It's been shown to be part of having strong bones. It's needed for the function of your muscles, your nerves, your immune system. It's been shown to be part of cancer protection. So we make vitamin D in our skin, in the subcutaneous portion, the lower portion of our skin. It's actually a hormone that our body makes. But when we don't have sun like now, or when we wear sunblock, it inhibits that production. So most people are taking vitamin D supplements, or they're getting it from the foods they eat. But us in the Northeast in particular, many of us have been advised by our medical provider to get some vitamin D no matter how we get it. The B12 is another thing. So we need vitamin B12 because it makes the red blood cells that help our nerves function. This is found in animal products. It's just ubiquitous in animal products. However, a lot of vegans and vegetarians use something called nutritional yeast. It's a vegetable vegan-based yeast that has kind of a cheesy flavor and a cheesy smell. People use it often to just emphasize the flavor in their food. You can get this in fortified cereals. If you look at your rice and your hemp milk and your soy milk, it's usually added in. Or your physician can do a blood test and recommend a supplement if he or she thinks that you need one. So zinc is something that comes up a lot too. So zinc is involved in the immune system function. It's involved in healing wounds and, believe it or not, blood sugar regulation. So zinc is found in a lot of plant-based sources, in the whole grains, the tofu, the tempeh. So these are soy-based proteins. Again, beans, peas, lentils, nuts, seeds. So if you're eating all of these things, you're probably going to be covered. The only thing with beans to keep in mind is they have shown that there is phthalates that come along in the beans, and they can stop zinc from being absorbed. So it's highly recommended, if you're not using canned beans, that you really, really soak your beans more than you normally would, just to get those phthalates out. The other thing is you can consume sprouted grains and beans. They also provide zinc. There's a great bread out there called Ezekiel bread. So it's Ezekil. It's usually found in the frozen section. It has an orange label, and it's a sprouted grain bread. And it's really nice because it's almost like eating a vegetable because everything's been sprouted. It's quite nice. So I always tell people, look, if you're going to shift into a plant-based style of eating, just really make sure that you let your health care provider know, whether it's your PA, your NP, your physician, because we have seen over and over again, when people start shifting into eating plants, their blood pressure can become lower, their blood sugar can become lower, and their cholesterol can become lower. And so then sometimes the person will find that they need to have their medication lowered, or they need it to be adjusted, or they need to come off of it. So that's really a nice side effect of plant-based eating, is getting off medications and becoming healthier. But it's important that your provider knows. So here's some words of wisdom again from Michael Pollan. He says, if it comes from a plant, eat it, on the right. And if it was made from a plant, don't. Not everything that's processed is bad for us, but I think we get his point, that he's trying to say eat that is what is closest to the ground, what's growing on the ground, what's walking on the ground, and try not to eat things that have been highly processed. If you'd like to get started, there's a lot of options for you. You can buy a vegetarian cookbook. I have many of those. There's a lot of wonderful websites out there. There's the Happy Herbivore, Oshi Glows. There's just Vegan Richa. There's just so many out there. You can just find them by putting in vegetarian cooking. And with your own family or with your own life, you can just decide, you know what, we're going to do meatless Mondays. And so we've had meatless Mondays, and it's been lentil soup or beans and rice, whole wheat pasta with marinara. There's a lot of ways to create that. So maybe that's what you'd like to do. Just make one day where you make it vegetarian. Plant-based snacks are a really good way of sneaking things in. So if you're just not ready to shift into making many of your meals plant-based, you can start with snacks. And that's an easy thing to do. So we're kind of getting out of the smoothie season. It's getting a little bit, colder, so we're not necessarily interested in eating smoothies, but they are a really nice way to blend up lots and lots of veggies and fruits and get you to eat them, but in a very condensed form. So that's one way. You can also add more plants and crowd out the meat. So rather than thinking I'm losing meat, something's being taken from me, thinking about adding in rather than removing. So burritos and tacos are a great way to do this because you can really fill a lot of beans and rice and tomato and cheese and maybe decrease the meat and cheese or add in like a vegan-based sour cream or something, and you just kind of change the ratio. You can do this with chili, and so we're getting into those colder months where we're going to eat a lot of stews and soups. You can do them with very little meat, or you can do them with no meat. You can trade out your regular burger for a veggie burger or a grilled portobello mushroom. We have been getting really good with making veggie-based meats. For example, the Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat. When I started becoming a vegetarian like 20 years ago, everything tasted like cardboard. So we've come a long way. These things taste really good. Kebabs are another way. So if you're still out there barbecuing, you can just mix in more vegetables, the onions, the bell peppers, the squash, and the mushrooms, and just put a little less meat on it. You can make large pots of beans and lentils and then freeze for later use. So I'll do that, and then when I take them out, I try to change up the seasoning. So it may be making it Indian one day or Thai the next day. I like to buy the pre-cut frozen or fresh vegetables. I know that they can be expensive, but I look at it as an investment in my health, and that I just have to, bite the bullet because I know I'm not going to sit there and zoodle a bunch of zucchinis. This is not going to happen. The other thing you can do is eat out. So if you're really venturing into this idea and you don't feel confident in your cooking skills, or you're really not sure what you like, you can eat out. You can go to so many restaurants now that are starting to really serve good vegan food or good vegetarian food, and learn from that. Take pictures, look at your plate, and say, maybe this is something I can make at home. So that's a nice way to learn. The other thing you can do is you can buy pre-cooked whole grains. So Stop and Shop, if you go, they have a Nature's Promise line, and they had pre-cooked brown rice. They had pre-cooked farro, I think, which is another whole grain. So you can find these already cooked. You don't have to worry about having to make them. We're starting to get back into wanting to eat potatoes and yams, so you can make extra potatoes and yams and freeze them or put them in tight container for another meal. Canned beans, I use them. I do like the texture of beans that are dried, but sometimes it's just easier to use canned beans. You can go out. Like I said so many restaurants are starting to offer vegan and vegetarian options. The other thing is restaurants of different ethnicities, specifically Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Turkish, Mexican, they typically cook with a lot of plants, a lot of veggies, a lot of nuts and seeds, and then, like I said, the meat is the condiment. So the meat is a very small portion. If you're looking to go out to eat and that's something you're comfortable doing, you can go to happycow.net. You put in your zip code and it will come up with a bunch of restaurants that are in your area that have vegetarian and vegan options. So I want to say that when we decide we want to change, or when we decide there's something we want to shift into, it takes time. So changing habits is a process, it's not an event. So what I say is really be patient with yourself and choose one or two things that interested you tonight. Maybe it was making sure that your snacks were vegetarian, or maybe you want to start meatless Mondays, and just take the time to implement that and give yourself that time to maybe get off track, but get back on track again, because that's normal. That's what happens. So I leave you with this. If you are truly interested in shifting into anything that you learned this evening about plant-based, I would say that it's really important to understand the law of diminishing intent. And really what that's saying is that the longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater are the odds that you will never actually do it. So an example from my own life is that I will put on sneakers. I have every intention at 7 a.m. to go for a walk, and I all of a sudden say, well, let me just check my emails first. And the next thing you know, I'm sucked into the email vortex, and I look up and it's 11 o'clock and I haven't done the walk I was supposed to do. And now I'm getting ready to think about eating lunch. And so I'm just walking around in sneakers. So it's really important, if there was anything that you thought maybe you would like to begin tomorrow, really begin it tomorrow, because that's just human nature, and I've done it and we've all done it. So I just wanted to leave you with that. So what I'd like to say is, if anybody has any questions, please, please, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. If you have anything that you would like to share and you don't want to share it with anybody, I welcome you to use the chat. That's there for you as well. So if anyone has anything they'd like to share, please, please let me know, and I will be happy to answer.